Awesome. Well, everyone, my name is Bill Fanning, and I help run I'm a part of the team here at Talk, and really excited you can make time for us to get together today. These are one of my favorite sessions because we get such valuable insights from people who are solving problems like Courtney and Phil, and sharing that with Alex is a delight. So I'm not going to talk for very long, but if any of you are coming in from LinkedIn, Talk is a free community. You're welcome to join. All it requires is your LinkedIn profile, and would love to have you be part of our community. We're excited to get going today. So I normally have some opening remarks, but the only thing I wanted to mention to everybody was that Talent Sphere, which is a conference that we're doing in conjunction with Talent Collective, which is taking place in Scottsdale, Arizona on June 3rd and 4th, is supporting some early bird tickets. And we also have a discount code for an additional 10%. So the promotion code is a secret word that only we will know, which is TALK. So if you type TALK into the promotion code, you can get an extra 10% off. But would really love to see as many people come out as we can. It's going to be a great experience. It is focused on practitioner to practitioner as a talent acquisition retreat. So it's not like a traditional trade show. And the goal is to have everybody walk away with some learning that they can share and bring back to their jobs the next day. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alex. Alex is part of the team here at Infor. I'm just shutting off my screen share real quick. And Alex, you're all set to share your presentation?
It says my share is disabled.
I will turn it on just a second. I don't 100% know why. There you go.
It'll be fixed. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So the topic today is hiring smarter and avoiding bad hires. So as we were starting this conversation, Bill shared an interesting story that kind of got me thinking about how we treat talent acquisition and how we approach it recently. So household names nowadays are artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and Copilot, and everyone's using them, and they're starting to be embedded in everything that we do. And Bill shared an interesting story with us of a candidate can take your job description and then take their resume and have it merge the two together and then use that to submit. So they're using a computer to apply to a job. And then if you're using an applicant tracking system that has some type of resume parsing or using artificial intelligence, it's a computer reviewing the application of another computer for a human to do a job. So there's obviously a lot of things that we're going to learn about artificial intelligence over the coming months and coming years. But one of the big things is that we don't want to lose track of that it's people that do the jobs. And usually our biggest asset within our organizations are the people. So we appreciate that Courtney and Phil have joined us today to talk about some of their stories. And Courtney brought up a good point as we were going through this initial discussion of, well, if we're wanting to make better hires and we want to avoid bad hires, we really need to have our own definition of what a bad hire is. So before we get into that, I will let Courtney and Phil introduce themselves. And can you guys see my screen?
Courtney, you want to go first? You muted, so I'll go first. Hi, I'm Phil Altschuler. I'm the Senior VP of Human Resources and Training for Gables Residential. Gables Residential is a basically multifamily apartment builder. We lease and manage apartments as well. We own a portfolio and also manage third party for others. Sorry, I got a big echo there. I've worked for Gables for 16 years, and we've been partnered with Infor for a very long time, and used the tool in all of our hiring practices.
For us, this is the only place where we meet together in the industry.
To express our voice, to point out our problems, to point out our ideas.
And also influence what Infor is going to do with its roadmap.
The Industry Council is a unique combination of industry leaders where they really get together, they share their insights, and together they're solving the problems that the industry faces.
Everything is face-to-face today, changing
on the daily basis.
We like to keep our ears to the ground as to how us and our competitors and our supply chains are dealing with the same challenge.
Infor is unique in being really accessible.
One of the things for which we rely on Infor is that we have also this kind of direct access.
Tell me this is what I can do to help you be more successful.
It is pushing us forward.
That's for sure.
Our teams are embedded in every single industry so that we can deliver the results that customers are looking for.
Awesome. Appreciate you joining. And Courtney, mind introducing yourself and a little bit about Children's?
Sure. I am Courtney Bradley, the Vice President of Talent Acquisition at Children's Health. I've been here for the past 2 years, having ownership and leadership over our talent acquisition and workforce efforts at Children's Health. Primary focus have been talent acquisition, workforce planning, contingent labor, and career advising. Excited to be a part of the conversation today. And also a little bit about Children's Health. We're one of the largest, or one of the many of the various pediatric healthcare organizations that is located in Dallas, Texas, and also in Plano, Texas as well. So excited once again to be a part of the conversation. And once again, I think we started the top of the morning with talking about one of those best teams to be a part of. So fly, Eagles, fly.
There you go. And Courtney helps to hire the team that takes care of my kids because they live in the Dallas area. So always appreciative and love spending time with you. So, all right. So we've got a poll that we're going to open up as Courtney and Phil are sharing their thoughts on this first question. But it really is around what is a bad hire? So Courtney, do you mind just kind of sharing your perspective of identifying what is a bad hire for Children's? What does that mean?
Right. So I think for Children's Health, it was very easy for hiring leaders to say, hey, that's not a good fit. That's just a bad hire. So we took a lot of time, as mentioned, on really defining who that is. And that's just not someone who doesn't work out into the role, right? That's someone who's negatively impacting our productivity, the culture, the patient care, and the overall dynamics and the culture of the organization. And of course, for healthcare, patient, for our patients, it's very critical for us to be able to hire the right candidate because of us caring for those little individuals that is so dear to us.
Okay. Phil?
The way I would sum this up is a bad hire is like a bad marriage. It's easy to get into, and it can be expensive and really hard to get out of, and it can ruin your life along the way. And so it's a question, if in a bad marriage, what's the worst part of it? Same thing with a bad hire. It impacts all these things. And depending on the bad hire, it could be one or many of these things that impacts your organization.
Okay.
And Phil, I haven't thought about it that way. I'm going to use that analogy next time.
It makes it relatable, right?
Yes, I love it.
We all know someone, yeah. So, and I'm looking at some of the poll responses. Pretty popular on lost productivity, lower team morale, increasing turnover as signs of a bad hire. So as we talk about bad hires, how are you identifying that maybe bad hires were happening? And Courtney, if you want to start on this one.
For us, it shows in your retention numbers, looking at where we're moving and how we're moving through the organization. It also shows where we had to implement and infuse more travelers and or contingent workers because the individuals that were leaving the organization. It also showed up in our EIE scores and surveys as well. So that is where we looked to or was able to identify that, hey, we may not have hires that is a good fit for Children's Health.
Okay. Phil?
Yeah, for us, it shows up. We do customer satisfaction surveys at several different touch points, including when you tour an apartment. So we see it there. We see it, if it's a bad hire on our maintenance side. We're constantly asking our residents how we're doing because we are a renter by choice more than a renter by need, which means that they have lots of choices. And if they're not happy living at one of our communities, they're going to go somewhere else. So it's really important that we find the right people who want to be there, who want to give good service, our slogan is taking care of the way you live. And so we try to do that with the associates too, take care of the way you work. When we have someone that's not a fit, it shows up in so many different ways. And so we work hard, A, to hire right, and B, to make sure we address those people, when it goes wrong.
Yeah. So then on that topic of hiring right, where did you start? Like once you identified this is what a bad hire is, how do we avoid making those and make better hiring decisions?
It's funny. Instead of focusing on what's a bad hire, we really try to focus on what's a great hire. And we say, what makes these people great? What are the differentiators? And how do we teach our hiring managers to better identify those qualities in individuals so we put them in the right positions? The challenge is, and even now, it gets more and more complicated, with AI, ChatGPT, and now DeepSeek. Candidates can literally put in the questions or put in the job description. It kicks out the questions and how they should answer. We used to use interviews as a way, not just to make sure you're a good fit for us, but to make sure we're a good fit for you. And it's only when you're a good fit together that you find that synergy and people are successful. So it's funny, as people cheat the system with these AI tools, and they're finding ways to do it. People are very creative that and many times they are leading to both their supervisor and their own unhappiness.
I was going to add, Phil, I think you brought up a good point, the interview, right? For us, we did a lot of interviews that were originally virtual, especially kicking off during the pandemic, but we've since moved a lot of those interviews back in-house to be in person. So we can eliminate those AI capabilities or resources to really get a feel of the candidate and the interview process.
I love that. Okay, so let's talk about today. And so I'll flip the terminology then. So instead of avoiding bad hires, Phil, like you said, making a great hire, like what is the strategy today? How is Gables making great hires?
The way we really do it. So let me go back. We are a great property management company, and we hire in people to be great property managers. And so their expertise is in managing properties and not necessarily in hiring talent. And it's funny, the better you are as a manager, the worse you are as an interviewer because you don't have as much experience or practice. We often say that your worst employees tend to be the best candidates because they often get, they change jobs a bunch. And if you change jobs and get a lot of practice interviewing, you just keep getting better and better. I always say you don't become a great basketball player by reading a book, right? It's the practice. Mm-hmm. So we work with our supervisors on their hiring skills, but really, being partners with Infor and using the talent science tool and creating up these custom profiles is a huge game changer for us in the fact that we use it in conjunction with Workday, which is our ATS, and it scores candidates. If they score under a certain thing, we don't even consider them. It's kind of stacking the deck in their favor. So the candidates they end up seeing have the highest probability of being successful in their chosen role.
Yep. Well, then it's always nice too, because even if they're below that score, you can see what's the other thing. Like you're making a recommendation to them of, hey, you apply to this job. If we're trying to find this mutual relationship between us, definitely. Here's why it's probably not the best fit, but I think you might enjoy this, and we have an opening for that. And then you don't lose out on a candidate. You're almost able to recycle that.
Yeah, very true.
Just wanted to jump in for 1 second, Alex. There's a great question that Austin asked, and it's around how companies can determine whether a bad hire was made versus the company could be responsible for that person not performing well due to insufficient support, resources, training, morale or culture issues. So as you guys are finishing this discussion, that might be a great question to address as well.
Okay. Do either of you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. It's a great question. We do quarterly associate engagement and satisfaction surveys and some pulse surveys. We get feedback, and you can instantly see trends and patterns around supervisors that are not as strong leaders as others. I'm trying to self-pedal. They're bad managers, right? And so that it does happen. We do have it where we have a manager, and you'll see their region underperforms, but it shows up in a number of areas. It's usually the bad apple stands out, whether that's the bad hire or bad leadership.
Yeah. And I think for us, it's with the recruiters, sometimes they submit that candidate and they think that candidate is the best fit, the top talent, or, the individual that they really want to close a deal with. So without that understanding of why that person may not have gotten to the interview process or to the offer process, really sometimes baffle them, or a candidate have joined the organization for 60 or 90 days and they said, hey, the leader says, hey, this was a bad hire. We go back and have those initial conversations with the leaders. What is that we were missing? What did we miss from the peer interview? We then start going back through the interview notes. So as we do additional replacements and or backfill that recruitment, we want to make sure that we get it right. Is it the job description that did not capture the candidate in which we were truly seeking? Was it the candidate profile? Was there a translation between the recruiter and the sourcing team that did not happen, that may have tweaked the candidate profile just a little bit? So what we've done was to have that initial intake call, not only with the recruiter and the hiring manager, but we've also used our sourcing team as well. And then also, if there's anything additional as it relates from a larger campaign or strategy, we also include our Marcoms team so they can hear what the leader is really looking for. So as we're putting out marketing campaigns or we're updating job descriptions, then we're wanting to make sure that that profile is matching what the leader is truly seeking. And in healthcare, it's a little bit difficult, right? Because there's so many different units. So a good candidate looks different depending if you're in the NICU or if you're in the PICU. So it's really hard to really define that in healthcare. But we've had to set a baseline for our leaders to understand this is where you start, and then how do we grow that from there as it relates to the units in which they are servicing.
Well, it kind of makes me think the line, people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad managers. And it's almost not fair to all managers, because we've had this term we've used a lot internally of not every manager went to manager school. You were a top performer on the team and you got promoted into the leadership role. So you might be a great individual contributor, you'd be great at sales, but you're not great at leading people. But what if the person who's best equipped to lead people is your 5th ranked in performance or your 8th? And that's maybe the reason why they're not a top contributor on the team. So it's about making sure those managers have something that can help employees when they have the question of, what does my growth potential look like at the organization? If it's an I don't know, because they don't have the resources available to help them answer that question, that's another gap that usually sends people running for the door.
Yeah, I think we also took a lot of time in growing our resources for also educating our managers on how to utilize the talent science, and also our recruiters, right? Because it starts with the recruiters. They're that entry point to the organization. And as we're doing the pass off between the various level of interviews in which our candidates have to go through, is how do we infuse that in every phase? So we've done a number of lunch and learns in partnership with Alex and others on the team to really educate the recruiters, but then also educate our hiring managers and the peer interview teams on how to really infuse that in the interview process.
Well, I know you guys had some really interesting milestones lately. So with opening your new clinic, do you mind sharing a little bit of the story around that new facility and some of the metrics you guys were measured against?
Oh, yeah, we love to. Recently, we've launched or had to staff the expansion of our Plano location. So really excited about that. We went live with that location. Soft launch was October. Full launch was in December. And in that launch, we had to hire a little bit over 400 plus individuals and was able to meet that threshold right at 93% staff in early October, November. Took took a lot of work for the team and a lot of commitment, right? But we did that through growth strategies, having our team visible to those strategies of the organization, but really being strategic about how we approach the recruitment strategies in the various phases on filling those particular roles. It also took a lot of campaigning and a lot of internal partnership as well.
So I'm hearing it wasn't just we sent a message once and everyone knew what we had to do. It was the lunch and learns leading up to it, and it was continual communication about what the shared objective is to keep everyone aligned.
Yeah, tons of communication, a very robust communication plan, not only internal to the organization, but also external to the community as well, because us supporting that growth that we have in Plano is also being supported by the community, right? Who are we able to attract to come to that particular location, but not only attract, but we're also wanting to retain them in that location as well and grow with the organization and grow their career with Children's Health.
Love it. All right, Phil. So I think we started getting into like maybe some milestones that you guys have achieved as well recently. I know you guys have gone through a couple big changes.
Yeah, so we've been with you guys for a number of years, and over the years, what people do at our communities has changed. In fact, over the past 2 years, we ended up outsourcing some of the back office administrative work to another partner, and that left the people at our communities really focused on sales and service and no longer on evictions or collecting late rent. And so the skills needed for success changed. So what we've learned is that over time, you have to keep, recalibrating the tool if you want the tool to be accurate and you want it to be useful. And so, we work with you guys to do that. Every time we do it, then we do, a post deployment study to see the impact, trying to avoid any adverse impact, but make sure that the tool is delivering the greatest results possible for us.
And that ultimately kind of helps validate what you've been doing, right? Because we can show like, this is how much we've improved retention or something like that you can take back to the business, which helps.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, since the assessment that they take keeps getting shorter and easier to complete, we see, more and more people willing to go through the process and take it. And one of the big issues, and I'm not sure what number of people on the call actually is a pre-employment survey. There's a number of them out there, or instrument, but when people go through the whole process to find a candidate and then you give them that last, no one likes to start over. So you find the managers fight really hard, even though there's a lot of red flags that are identified and it doesn't look like they might be a good fit. So we really like the fact that we do this up front. And before any of our managers invest any valuable time in vetting the candidate, spending that time with them, bringing them in for personal interviews, that they have a pretty good idea of whether or not they'll be a good culture fit or a good fit for that particular role based on their own behavioral preferences.
Okay. And Courtney, I didn't mean to cut you off before you had a thought.
No, just had a follow-up question actually for.
Might still be. Can you hear us, Courtney?
Yeah, sorry, I can hear you now.
Do you mind repeating that? Your screen froze for a second.
Oh, sorry. I was just asking a follow-up question to my colleague here, Phil. Do you guys utilize that inner assessment as individuals move throughout the organization? Because one of our focus is internal mobility. So it's just a follow-up for Phil.
Oh, yeah. So what's nice about the instrument is we have a whole comprehensive succession planning process. And we use every tool we can to help assess people and the likelihood of success in different roles. So, yeah, we do use it. And back to before, you talked about training your hiring managers on how to use it. We found that once people better understood how to use it and how to understand it, the effectiveness of it, was much greater. not just doing it because it gave them a number.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I forget, have either of you explored, like, so as you're enabling the managers, it's show them something about themselves, or even like, so we have like the teams that you can compare, and you as a team, you tend to be very similar in this or different in this. Have you considered those or thought of doing those in certain areas?
We've looked at our profiles, and we're actually going through updating those profiles and making sure that they are matching and they roll up together to make sure that we're getting the results in which we're wanting to feed and or share as a resource to our hiring managers. Since then, we've had to expand and or remove a couple of profiles, really that we're able to provide a different resource. Either the position was changed or the position had a different scope. So we've had to remove and shift that around. We've went through recently, I have completed all of our nursing profiles, which was a huge lift for us, which also supported some of the success that we probably had as it relates to the expansion as well.
Okay. So more, yeah, as you're changing profiles, making sure that, again, keeping up the communication, these are the changes that have been made. So as we thought we were looking for this type of person, it's adjusted a little bit. We've raised the bar, the type of individual we're looking for. These are the differentiators. So, okay.
Exactly.
Bill, what about you guys?
Sorry, someone just sent me a message. What was the question?
It was about, so as you're enabling managers, it's getting them involved. So either like comparing them to a profile or doing
Sorry, the team,
them taking themselves.
Sorry, yeah, we've actually used the team dynamics component that's offered through talent, science to help us look at teams. You want to make sure that you've got good representation. We use some other tools as well. In fact, my group next week is going through something, and it's, I don't know if you team management dynamics, where you find out who's a creator, who helps get things implemented, who are the inspectors, et cetera. So we do a lot of this. I mentioned before about succession planning. We spend a lot of time doing talent reviews of our existing people. Then we try to identify who their successors are and who they are a successor to. And then we, at that point, we look for what are the gaps to those people taking those roles. And that's when we'll pull in the results, and see if there's any other things that we can glean from these reports that helps us to set people up for success in whatever roles we're trying to have them do.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we've identified what a great hire is versus a bad hire, how we've enabled the teams, some of the wins that we've had. How, Courtney, start with you. Like, how is this becoming part of the focus going forward? Like, was there anything in particular that started this shift and then kind of prepares you for the future?
I think for us, and being a little bit more strategic in identifying what's a good hire and a bad hire really started back during the pandemic for us. As we move forward, we want it to be a part of our strategic focus moving forward, simply because we're wanting to get over the hump of hiring fast and really hiring for the right candidate. So it's part of a larger focus for us moving forward. How do we be proactive in our strategies? How do we have those open and honest needed conversations?
Okay. Well, I know you guys were making a migration. So with the pandemic, you had to rely a lot on contract labor. So contract nurses. Can you talk a little bit about that transition as well?
So we've had some recent success or milestones as it relates to the reduction in our traveler workforce or contingent workforce. We started with an initiative which called Staffing to Beds. And in that initiative, we started out roughly around maybe 300, 200 plus travelers. And today we average anywhere between about 25 travelers on average, traditionally in our nursing space. So we were able to truly reduce a large number of our contingent workforce. So it have definitely helped us focus on our internal movement of our internal candidates as well, where we're not so focusing on having to bring in travelers.
Okay. And I liked something you shared before is if something like the pandemic were to happen again, we're prepared for it, where we had to be very reactive at that time. we've learned from that, and the position that we're in now, we are built for success for the future. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. We have a plan in place this time around.
Right. Yeah, we need another 100 years before a pandemic, at least.
Yes.
At least. Phil, what about you
Well,
guys?
it's funny, and the pandemic seems like a long time ago now, but just like the hospitals can't shut down and close when the pandemic hit, where people live. So when they stopped going to work, they stayed home. So, in a normal community, when people go to work, the community is fairly empty during the day. And then during the pandemic, they were completely full, especially when people were, stuck at home. And that put a huge demand on our business. We track everything. And when we looked at our turnover, under 1 year, 1 to 3, 3 to 5, so on. We really saw the majority of the turnover we had was with people under 1 year. And so back to the question that was asked earlier, is that bad management or bad hiring or some combination of the two? And so we spent a lot of time trying to figure that out, because what we saw is once people made it 3 years, they really stuck. I mean, it went way down on turnover. So it really, the question would be, are we telling people what the job is? Are we doing a good job helping people understand the expectations? Are we training them right? Are we setting them up for success? It's another piece to that is, and I have a theory of why people really quit jobs. And it's nothing that you think, by the way. You probably think it's bad manager, bad benefits, or they could make more money somewhere else. I would argue that it's really someone whose opinion they depend on. Could be their mom or dad, could be their spouse. But what happens is Bill's a bad manager. Sorry, Bill, I'm picking on you. So Bill's a bad manager. And, I go home to my wife, Courtney, and what do? I complain about Bill. And the first couple times, Courtney's like, listen, honey, I'm sure it's just a bad day. It'll get better. But over time, Courtney, frankly, gets tired of hearing about it. So she then changes to, maybe you need to look for another job. And finally ends up with, I'm tired of hearing about it. You need to quit that job and find something else. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's either me or Bill. And that's why people quit. So you got to find a way to get the managers to pay attention to the people as people, so they don't go home every day and tell someone how terrible a human being you are and give them a reason to quit. The only way that happens is if you know what the jobs are, if you know what the expectations are, if you're hiring the right people. Like, there's a lot of things that have to happen right to achieve that. And so that's what we really strive to do. And we use any tool we can to try to achieve it.
Well, thank you, Phil, for picking me over Bill and the reminder to put the
Courtney,
people
I
first.
heart you.
I love it. And I think that's a great reminder, right? The people is first, regardless of what organization you're with. Is how do you help those individuals within the organization, and how do you really hear what they are needing as team members?
Well, it made me think, Phil, so yeah, when someone leaves, it's you need to quit that job, or you need to quit that manager. A lot of times it's easier to find a job outside of your organization than it is inside. So that's typically the thing that you would hear from your spouse or significant other or friend or family is find another job. And you immediately think, go to job board, find job, instead of, well, I already work here and I like the culture, like the people, just like I'm having issues with this situation. Where can I go really easily to find something else and make a transition? And that's not the case. They go the job board route.
Okay. And keep in mind that most advice givers in your life are not trained advice givers. And they're acting on their own selfish, benefits. In fact, we're currently working on a program, and we'll use Courtney and Bill again. So if I was making $1 million a year and I went home and complained to Courtney, I can promise you she wouldn't tell me to quit that job, especially if I couldn't replace that $1 million anywhere else. So we know that Courtney can be bought. We just need to find a way to do it that's less than $1 million.
One of our people strategies coming out of 24, going into 25, 26, and 27 is internal mobility, right? How do we make sure that we're providing the safe space for those individuals to have open conversations with the talent acquisition team so we can retain them within the organization? So we've done a couple of things to really make sure that the talent acquisition team is forward facing to the organization, but we've also done a number of things to update our technology, right? So we've updated our internal career website, and then we've also enhanced some of the product that we are offering from our career advising team as well. How do we make them available to be on the units and having some of those conversations with those hiring managers as well?
All right, doing a quick time check. I think we've got time for at least one more. And then, so if everyone has questions, start thinking and putting them into the chat as we kind of wrap up with this one. But I know you both shared some just things you've been working on in the past that are initiatives, creative things. Phil, I know you like the what are you doing creative question from before, but yeah, like what are you guys doing next, focusing on as it relates to talent, building pipelines, making sure that sounds like mobility opportunities. Courtney, if you want to go first, what are some of the things that you guys are eyeing for the future?
Well, to prepare for the future, I think we really had to start early. So one of the unique things that we have done is we wanted to get embedded with our school systems and see how can they partner with building that future for children's health. So we launched a program that's called Project Explore. And pretty much that program is designed to introduce high school students to various roles within healthcare. And that could be on the clinical side and non-clinical side. Just as a reminder, we have to fill both sides of the house. But taking that same sentiment and sharing that with individuals within the community or within the high schools have really helped and move forward with some of building those pipelines for the organization. So we do that in 2 different ISDs right now in DFW. And the first initial annual meeting or annual kickoff went really well, that several of the other ISDs are asking for us to be embedded into those, into their career pathing and initiatives that they have within the school as well. So we've had a few placements from that project, but most importantly, we have the community behind us and also the parents. So in that session, the parents are bringing their little ones to partake in this, but then we're also building off of the connection with the parents and say, hey, both of you join Children's Health as well. So building the pipeline in various ways.
I love it. Well, and it's a challenge that's been occurring for a little while now. Like if there aren't enough people in school to do the jobs, you have to find them early. And maybe even potentially they might think they want to do something and you can help them. Like, no, you really should do this thing. You're going to be really good at this. And by the way, we have jobs for that. We hire all the time. And here's a program that you can go through. So I love that it involves the community and helps people get down the right path and doing a job. Hopefully they love their life.
Yeah, and they're so excited when they come on site to see what it's like to be in a hospital setting. So we're excited about that program to carry it into 25.
It's rewarding work, so we appreciate it. Phil, what about you guys? I know you guys have some creative things moving in as well.
Yeah, you know, when people are little kids, no one, I think, says, gee, when I grow up, I want to be a residential property manager or property engineer. It's usually focused on doctor or cowboy or fireman or something fun. So we have to be creative in how we attract talent and, again, leverage everything. We have to make sure that people see the jobs we offer as being an interesting, compelling option. We do a couple things. Number one is we actively participate in a lot of best places to work, and we win. And we know that sets us apart in our own industry. So if you're looking for a job and, if you come across this place was #1 best place to work in multifamily, that means a lot and offsets if there's a bad comment or two on Indeed or Glassdoor, which just invariably happens. We also partner with some interesting firms. There are groups out there that take homeless people, train them in a trade, like on how to repair things, and then work with companies like us to place them. Because we own and manage apartment buildings, we also have employee discounts for our associates. And For regular associates, it can be 40%, but for these folks, it's greater than that. And then over time, as they make more money, the discount scales down and they assimilate and become a regular employee. But it helps bridge them into these roles. So there's a community component to it, a social component to it. And frankly, it's a great resource for us to staff what often can be difficult to staff positions. On the other side, the operations side, we're constantly looking for people in any service industry, whether it's retail or hotel, restaurants. And we try to make every one of our employees a recruiter. It used to be you'd walk around and hand out cards. Now we're trying to get people to leverage their social media, and we use employee referral programs. Through that program, I believe it's almost 40% of our hires come through somebody that's currently working. And, Net Promoter Score, I'm not sure if everyone knows what that is, but it's how people feel about your firm. In our employee engagement survey, we always ask the question of, would you recommend us as a place for friends or family to work? And we pay a lot of attention to that score because those are the people that, will go out and tell other people we're a great place to work and you should get a job there. If we don't do a good job with the existing people, it makes it very hard to be an interesting place to work for anyone else.
I like that. It's all great. Okay, we've got a couple questions in the chat. All right, so does anyone have a solid quality of hire metric or metrics that you have found to be effective? I think reductions in turnover rate, would that be? I know, Phil, we did one of your post-impact analyses recently.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a number of post-deployment studies, and I think a great measure would be reduction in turnover. If you figure out the cost of turnover and you look at what it was before you implement something, and then you wait some period of time, you see what it is later, times the cost per hire. For us, I think it was upwards of $750,000, $800,000 in savings just by implementing a different recruiting process and utilizing a tool versus people's, shoot from the hip instincts.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the same would be for us. We also look at that first year turnover because we hired quite a few new graduates as well.
Okay. And I just, for most of the clients we talk to, that seems to be the most common. Like everyone can track turnover and compare it to a pre and a post. Performance and culture, those typically need to be measured well and accurately and at the individual level before they can be analyzed. So yeah, I would agree that turnover rate tends to be one of the more common.
Well, for our salespeople, we can look at their closing ratios, how many people come in versus how many people actually sign. In our maintenance side, it's really around the compliance of preventive maintenance and doing what you need to do to help manage costs effectively. So there's a number of ways, but it's generally very different based on what role we're hiring for.
Got it. Okay. All right. Last question that's in the chat. Does the panel agree that the relationship with a long-term successful employee begins at the time of their application? If so, are you automating a communication and qualification strategy that's initiated from the application stage?
I would disagree just a little bit because we're in healthcare. I believe our relationship begins in the community because that's who we service. So I'll start it back just based on the Children's Health brand. So when you see that red balloon, if it's there or if it's there on your screen, that's really where it starts for us. As far as the application status, as it relates to any automating communication, we've done a lot of automation to really make sure that we're adding that to our strategies as well. Long-term and short-term, how do we get some of those quick wins? But then how do we infuse this in our long-term strategy as it relates to the application process, to any of the AI resources that we're utilizing as well?
And to echo what Courtney just said, there's actually a book called The Zero Moment of Impact. Mm-hmm. And it's all about, if you, like for Gables, it's having a very strong brand and being seen as a good place to live makes people interested in wanting to be a part of that. If we were a terrible place and and we were not nice people, nobody would really want to work for you at that point. So it happens there. And on the flip side, every candidate is also a potential resident. And so you've got to treat everyone with respect. You've got to be nice. You've got to follow up. You've got to treat humans like human. I don't know if we do it right all the time, but we strive to, because you want to create lasting relationships. And honestly, if someone's not right for the job and they leave in a good way, they might recommend someone else who is.
Yeah,
that's true. So consensus that it's before the application. It's not just the application process.
Yeah, but you want to do that right too.
Right. Of course, yeah. In the community, in your branding and all of that.
The sad thing is no matter how many things you do right, people tend to focus on what you do wrong. And so it's really important to try to get as much right as possible, because we tend to remember the mistakes and in a very negative way. Like you remember the mistake 10 times worse than it was and forget all about the good stuff. I like to tell you about, like, if you walk into a building and the walls are painted perfectly, you don't notice anything. But if there's holes and it looks really bad, you would recognize that. You'd remember that. So you got to get it right. And people may not notice it's all right, but they know it's not.
When it makes you question the durability of what's behind those walls and everything else. Whereas if it's clean, you just don't think of that otherwise. Well,
you think if this is how they keep the place you see, what does the place you don't see look like?
What you don't see, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I don't see any other questions in the chat, but for anyone who's interested in continuing the conversation, I think someone's dropping some contact details in the chat. You can book some time on our calendar if you wanted to get connected. We also have, if you're a little shy and don't want to have a conversation, we've got someone on our team who regularly posts some content about acquiring new talent and some of their best practices from being a consultant. So it's one of our industrial and organizational psychologists. So if you want to follow Michelle on LinkedIn. And then lastly, for everybody, if you want to take out your phone, you can scan the QR code on the screen, or we can drop the link in the chat as well. So the assessment that Courtney and Phil have been talking about today, it's free. You can complete that. And then there's a little report at the end that tells you what we can learn about your behavioral DNA. So your preferences at work and how you tend to approach things like tasks and time management. So it's just a fun little thing to take away and learn about yourself. Feel free to share that with anybody on your team as well. But we really appreciate everybody joining. Courtney, Phil, always love the conversation with you guys. Appreciate you spending some time with us and the talk audience. And Bill, thanks for hosting, sir.
Sure.
Thanks,
I'm glad you're here. Phil, before we
Thanks
end,
so
there
much.
was one question. What was the name of the book that you referenced?
The Zero Moment of Impact.
The Zero Moment of Impact. So Stephanie in chat, that is the name of the book, The Zero Moment of Impact. So hopefully that is a great read and you can go out and grab it. So thank you everyone very much. It was a great discussion. I'm really glad everyone was here to be part of it, and definitely looking forward to the next one.
Thanks everyone. See you next time.
Bye-bye.